Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Shred Show Live. It is Friday, March 27th, and we want to thank you so much for joining us. As you can see, I have back on the show the one, the only Jonathan Corr, CEO and president of Ellie Mae. Very excited to have Jonathan back on the show this morning. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan. I appreciate you being on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me on, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Goodness gracious, my friend. A lot to dive into this morning. Holy smokes. I mean, you and I could have conversations for hours, but I'm excited to have you because, Jonathan, you are one of the leaders. You're one of the influencers. People turn to you. People look to you when it comes to times like this. You've been in this industry so long that you've been through this before. And you and I were just having a conversation of, hey, you know what? There is hope amidst the chaos, ladies and gentlemen. I want that to kind of be our as we go through today's episode, I want you to keep that in mind. That's what we've titled today's episode. And Jonathan's going to bring some hope. He's going to bring some absolute knowledge when it comes to what's going on. So Jonathan, before we dive into everything, I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things. But if you're joining us live right now, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, thanks for joining us live. Comment hashtag Ellie Mae if you're joining us live right now. And if you're joining us on the replay, make sure you comment hashtag hustle. You're out there getting it done. Then you're coming back and watching the show. So Jonathan, there is a lot going on. There's a lot of things. This is being said. And you're one of those guys who actually you're one of the knowledgeable ones. You have the expertise. So first and foremost, what are your thoughts on everything? Does this feel like 2008? Are we in a different place in 2008? Where are we right now?
I guess at the surface, people can say maybe it feels like 2008 because it is chaotic, right? This is chaos on a number of different sides, driven by what's going on with COVID-19, driven by the incredible refi volume that we saw early in the quarter. But I think it's different. 2008, that was a financially driven disruption. It was definitely driven by some players in our industry making decisions that just probably stretched the envelope a bit. And it was a bit self-inflicted. Folks looked at, our industry as the driver of what happened in 08. This is very different. What's going on right now is obviously being driven by, COVID-19, the pandemic, the dynamic of this, this enemy that we're all facing. We're facing it globally, and we're facing it nationally, and we're facing it across the board. And but it's obviously creating chaos in our industry. Just a short time ago, we had tremendous refi pipeline, and we still do. But with the stay-at-home orders that are out there, it's making it very difficult for many of our customers and partners to go off and get the loans done for the consumer. And so, there's a lot of things being done to help that in terms of some of the appraisal adjustments and verifications, verbal verifications of employment, and other things that Fannie and Freddie are doing to try to allow those loans to still get done. And I think it's important, right? In a situation where there is this economic impact that we're all seeing, if we can do refis for consumers, that's a stimulus in and of itself. Obviously, the volatility in rates, mortgage-backed securities, MSR values is creating a lot of chaos and a lot of squeeze on a lot of our customers and partners in the industry. The big thing that obviously is probably playing the biggest role there is this thing that I know a lot of folks are talking about, which is the forbearance that is being placed out there. As we look at things, the administration and Congress is trying to figure out how to provide some stimulus and some support for so many folks that are going to be faced with a tough situation, given that many businesses are not being able to bring in revenue, and people are working from home and some people being laid off, the stimulus bill, obviously asks that lenders help out in this situation, or told to help out. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, the fact is, if we can help as an industry right now, and in the case of forbearance, if someone can't pay their mortgage payment because they're in a difficult situation, anything that we could do obviously is a positive to allow them to get through this tough time. The language asks that or says that consumers can get 6 months of forbearance and then another 6 months. That's on the Fannie and Freddie side. I believe the same thing will be true on the HUD side for FHA product, et cetera. And in this scenario, right, what does that mean? What does forbearance mean? Well, basically it means that if the consumer can show, and in this case, they don't have to show much, but if they say they're in a tough situation, they can ask the servicer to push out payments. That doesn't mean they don't ever have to pay. I mean, they can push out payments and push out interest for that period of time. That obviously has to catch up when they start paying again. Again, a good thing for the consumer. But what is that doing to the industry right now, which is some of the chaos we're all facing in terms of the ability to sell loans, MSR values, affecting our pipelines, et cetera. That is because servicers cannot stop paying investors. So they still have to pay the investor even though the consumer isn't paying. And that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on servicers and lowers the value of holding those servicing streams. There's an exposure there. Now, I think that there's light out there. I know that the NBA has been working very hard in Washington with Treasury, and the stimulus bill that hopefully will be signed today, cleared by Congress, by the House, and signed by the president, has a liquidity facility in it, a $450 billion liquidity facility that everybody in Washington understands. The Treasury understands some of those funds have to be relief for servicers. Otherwise, this request for forbearance will create tremendous chaos in this industry and put lenders in a very difficult position, may even put some lenders out of business. So I believe, and I'm very optimistic, that that's going to happen and happen in quick order. There's technical elements to it, but MBA is all over it. They're on it every day, 24 hours a day, and I'm pretty confident and optimistic about it. And I think once that happens, some of the chaos, some of the disruption in pipelines will calm down. Hopefully that is within the next 30 days or even sooner. But everybody is doing everything they can. And again, we're not the driver of this situation. Obviously it's a more global dynamic. We can help in this situation, but we also need to be protected just as many other businesses do.
And I'm really glad you kind of dove into the finer details of what a forbearance is, because I know I'm seeing mortgage professionals, originators across the industry kind of take to social media trying to be the expert on this, and they're missing it. I've seen a couple of people talk about what a forbearance is, and it's not really what it was. So I'm so glad that you define that and how it's affecting everybody. It's affecting originators, it's affecting mortgage companies. So again, ladies and gentlemen, everybody watching this, we have a lot of people joining us live. Thanks so much again for watching us and joining me and Jonathan as we discuss a few things in our industry. Make sure that you just go back and watch it maybe 2 or 3 times what Jonathan just explained, so you can, again, educate your audience on what a forbearance is. And again, not everybody should just be going out and just claiming, oh, you know what, the industry or everything's difficult right now, I need a forbearance, because again, it does affect our industry significantly. So Jonathan, I'm really glad that you kind of really set what this forbearance means
Yeah.
and how to approach it, because it is, and there are so many other things affecting our, and I'm glad you talked about the MBA, because the MBA is doing a phenomenal job when it comes
They
down
are.
to really helping us as an industry. So let's talk about, I mean, Ellie Mae, you guys continue to do awesome things. You guys have an event coming up at the virtual experience. Of course, this week we were all supposed to be down in San Diego at the Ellie Mae Experience, but of course, with everything that's going on, that's kind of had to be pushed back. You guys have pushed things to it now, a virtual experience, which is coming up on April 20th.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, Josh, and I appreciate the time to try to, create some clarity to some of this. And I hopefully I did a little justice. There's just a lot of moving parts. One of the things I think before I jump into experience is, there's a lot of things that we're trying to do, and we will highlight at experience. But given all these changes in appraisal, and the alternatives out there, some of the alternatives around verbal verification, even some of the things that Fannie and Freddie are going to allow with gap insurance, so that if you can't record immediately because some of the county recorders are closed, you'll be able to do something and be able to get some insurance so that recording can happen later. So at least as an industry, with all this other, these elements going around and the volatility, we can continue to get things done for the consumer. And, Ellie Mae is definitely trying to do a lot of this with our technology, working with different partners, and, accelerating even elements like remote notarization and digital closings, which I think we'll highlight at the experience. Not something that we expected to do as quickly, but we're nimble. We're trying to basically do what we can to let our customers help keep the system going. So virtual experience, we are excited. We were very disappointed. Obviously, we weren't in San Diego this past week, but we are going to be. We've put out the press release. We've talked about what's going to be out there, and we're going to try to make it as a full experience as we can in a virtual fashion. We'll lose some of that connection and networking and seeing each other, person to person, but at least get out some of the value, some of the speakers, some of the great tools and tricks and tips, and education, so that in this time people can still continue going out, serving the consumer, continuing to develop themselves as better professionals. That's what we're trying to achieve. So we've got a sign up page on our site to keep informed about it. The registration will be coming up soon. I believe it'll be up early next week. We've got keynotes from myself and Joe and Bob Brooksmith from the MBA. There's going to be 16 Simu-Live sessions. I'm not sure what those are, but they're going to be really good, because they're going to cut across an array of things, all the way from consumer engagement, what's going on in the industry, developer capabilities, new technology and capabilities that we're putting out there and highlighting what we have right now to help folks deal with maybe working with consumers in a bit of a virtualized or distanced way rather than face to face, to keep the system going. You'll be able to ask questions, chat. There'll be education, and then there'll also be some additional education that you can sign up for that's more in depth, and that you can register for at additional costs later on. But we'll be covering things like IRLA. That's still in place right now. We'll see if that changes in the industry. There is talk about that. But again, we're excited about this virtual experience. It's our first time. Hopefully we can, really do a great job and provide a lot of benefit to our customers and partners.
As always, you guys do. I think it's going to be great. I'm excited for it. I want to go back to something, and not to push the experience aside, because I think this experience is going to be awesome. I think people need it right now. But you mentioned something earlier that I want to kind of come back to. You mentioned that this has a very different feel than 2008, and what we're going through right now. There's a lot of talk of we haven't seen the worst of it yet. There's the worst is still yet to come. There's a lot of doom and gloom. But again, as we talked about from the very beginning, there's still hope. Where should we as an industry really be focused on? I know you talked about the consumers and how we can help them, but in your opinion, personal, professional opinion, where do we need to be focused as an industry where we can spread hope, collaboration? Where should we really be focused right now?
What you got to focus on is what you can control. The fact is, there's a lot of things that we can't control and we can worry about and have fear about. But what you can control, obviously, is making sure your family is safe and healthy, your teammates, your employees are safe and healthy, that you're doing everything you possibly can to effectively support your customers and get the loan done for them so that they can get an economic benefit. You can obviously plan for challenging situations, but you can't control them. And what you also though can control is thinking about being creative, adapting, looking at technology to make adjustments from how you do things normally. One thing that, this is definitely a different situation and it calls for, being creative, thinking outside the box, and also not losing sight that, likely this is going to be a set of short-term pain. There's various folks talking about, is this a V recovery in the recession so that we have a very difficult Q2, but then we recover very quickly in the second half? And I think our industry in housing and real estate finance could be a real stimulus to that. That's usually very much the case in most recessions. That's different than obviously '08, but we were part of the problem then. Could it take a little bit longer? Possibly. But there's a lot of things being done, across the country from a national standpoint. And we're all in this together. I think that there's nobody that is, the cause of this. The culprit is this pandemic, and we all have to come together, look out for each other, be kind, and don't lose sight of the long term. The challenge right now, obviously, is many of us are working at home. It's new for a week or two. You don't want to burn yourself out. You got to take time. You got to take time for yourself physically and mentally, because there is a bit of this is not a sprint. And someone said to me, it's a marathon. Well, I said, no, it's not really a marathon. It's right. It's sometimes it's a 5K, right? It's a short run. We got to get through it. And then we also have to be thinking about, once we get through it, how are we positioning ourselves for, this industry and where we're going to be going, as we exit 2020? Because I do think there's a bright light at the end of the tunnel. I think, housing, housing demand, millennial demographics are all going to be positive as we go forward. We just got to get through this very difficult time that we're all facing, but I think it's short term.
I love that you say it's a 5K, because I agree. I 100%. I don't think it's a marathon, but it's not a sprint. You got to find that middle ground right now, and you got to pace yourself. That's anybody who's ever run. Everybody knows I've talked about this on the show. I'm not a runner by any means, but I've run a couple 5Ks in my life, and you have to run fast enough. Again, so I love that you compare it to that, because, and I love that you're talking about that. There's some positivity. You talked about planning, control the things that you can control. Plan. None of us expected this, but I think more than anything, Jonathan, is if anything else, as professionals, everybody, anybody, whether you're in the mortgage industry or not, I think this really, hopefully, this pandemic, everything that we're going through, gives you a better idea of how to plan for the future, how to put the right things in place, savings, how you talked about family, taking care of the things that are really important. So I love that you talk about that, because that's one thing that we can control. We never know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we can plan and we can really be prepared for events like this. So I love, and I know that's something you're doing with Ellie Mae and all the partnerships and the collaborations that you have. So Jonathan, thanks so much for bringing that up, because I think that is absolutely important. As we start to wrap things up, as we start to kind of wrap up the show here, is there anything else in particular personally, professionally, that you are staying positive about, and this message of positivity amidst the chaos? Is there anything else you want to share with the audience today as we start wrapping things up?
You know, I think you kind of alluded to it, Josh, and I think it's, always thinking about any situation, whether it's good or bad or, challenging, what is the positive that can come out of it? What do you learn from it? How do you grow from it? And one of the things that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing it in our organization, and I'm seeing it in so many organizations and so many people, is this, there's a bit of a unifying that's going on, right? And you see it, you're seeing it at the levels in Washington, even though there's still some politics going on, but people coming together, crossing the aisle. You're seeing it in businesses where people are just looking out for each other. The teams are even stronger. They're thinking, ahead. People are doing the same for their partners, for their customers, for their neighbors. And, if anything, you just kind of look at this and you say, that's just kind of human nature. And I think sometimes stressful situations bring out the best, and it's good to see that. And I think that's what I'm, taking away right now, and reminding myself and my family and my employees, because it is hard, right? It is stressful. It is scary sometimes. And, how do you get yourself centered, and really think about the positive?
I love that, and I think we need more messages just like that. With that's, I want to end on that, because that is one of those, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you listen to that. In times like this, sometimes we do lose sight of what's truly important. And Jonathan, you just talked about it. You highlighted our families, the people around us, our neighbors, our employees, the people we work side by side with every single day when times are good. So being able to focus on that and being able to take a step back and realize that, hey, you know what? Things aren't as bad as they may seem. Again, we're not trying to sidesweep anything. We're not trying to say that, things are a little bit crazy and chaotic right now, but amidst all that, there still is hope. So I appreciate, as a leader, as an influencer in our industry and in our country, let's just say, Jonathan, people look to you. So I appreciate you taking some time this morning to really come on here, talk about the virtual experience coming up. We're all excited for that on April 20th. And then as well, just sharing that message of hope. So again, I cannot thank you enough, Jonathan, for your time and for your leadership within our industry.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate it. And it's always a pleasure.
It's an honor to have you on the show, Jonathan. I'm definitely know we will have you on again here soon. But ladies and gentlemen, again, we appreciate you joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule. And as Jonathan and I had talked about, find hope amongst and spread that message of hope. Your audience, your clients, our consumers, they need us. They need us to put on that brave face amidst these times and share that message of hope. So as always, we appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. We'll see you guys soon.